Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our listeners from all over the world. My name is Joulia Bou Karroum, and I'm very happy to welcome you to the 21st interview in the CoP interview series hosted by the UN Women Training Centre's Community of Practice. We're very lucky to be joined today by Joulia Bou Karroum, who will be speaking to us about women's and youth participation and training for gender equality, among other things. So as listeners of this series will know, the CoP interview series features a range of experts interviews on topics related to training for gender equality. It builds on our 2017 and 2018 editions, and this new edition for 2019 will run from July through to December. So each interview lasts for half an hour, and everyone listening live can use the questions option in the GoToWebinar panel to ask questions at any time. So without further ado, please let me introduce our guest for today. Joulia has 15 years of experience as a gender advisor and a certified trainer in human rights instruments, international mechanisms, elections law, election monitoring, voter education, women and youth's participation, NGO management, citizenship, leadership, and advocacy. She has special expertise in the Middle East and North Africa region, the MENA region, and especially in Lebanon. She has also been involved and led the implementation of a range of projects by local and international NGOs and other organizations, such as the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, the Lebanese Association for Democratic Elections, Women in IT, and now is the Human Rights Education Coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa at Amnesty International. So Joulia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. But may I add something to on the top of the introduction? Because I actually now I left Amnesty, so I'm working currently with the National Commission for Lebanese Women, and I'm the gender expert consultant to develop the gender equality indicators measurement tools. So in order to measure the gender equality in Lebanon. So this is my new position currently, besides some additional research work with the Asfari Institute at the AUB, American University of Beirut. So this is some additional tips.
Great. Well, I think that leads us very nicely to the questions that I wanted to ask you today, because as you say, you have particular experience of, especially of women and youth's engagement, but also of elections and working in the MENA region more broadly, and promoting democratic elections especially. So I wonder if you could give our listeners maybe a sense of what the situation is for electoral and democratic governance in the region, and also why gender equality is so important in this context.
Yes, sure. So yeah. Again, thank you for hosting this interview, and I'm very pleased to be part of this series. It's very important to get in contact with practitioners all over the world, and this is one of the platforms that make it easier to reach. So thank you so much for the hosting. Well, I'm going to give you a quick background about the Middle East and North Africa regions, where it still continues to be one of the most autocratic parts of the world. While the Arab Springs raised hope for more just and democratic MENA, such as aspiration, were soon crushed by rising violence and sectarian conflict. And we all know the conflicts taking place currently in the Middle East and many different regions, Syria one of them, Yemen one of them, Lebanon used to be on ongoing political tension, etc., and Egypt, of course. We don't forget as well Libya. So you can say that the region is actually living the conflict results that these aspirations didn't reach its goals by those who actually participated in the Arab Spring. So what continues to be remarkable in this is the ability of the region's rulers to hold onto power and to maintain legitimacy through various political means and constitutional arrangements. So elections are one, or if you can say not only one, it's one of the most durable mechanisms employed by those in power. Yet, very little is known about the significance and consequences of these elections in these atypical settings. So thus, there was a need to focus on the election and political behavior of legislators and voters in the MENA region, and therefore promoting gender equality is a must and a key to shift these behaviors of voters and legislators toward more representative and fair elections. So this is a quick brief, if you want, on how this region is actually functioning in terms of elections and understanding the democratic process of the elections, and how the legislators and the voters actually act toward these elections mechanisms. In the Lebanese case, for example, although Lebanon is known in the Middle East for its relative political openness and for the degree of freedom that Lebanese women enjoy in general, it is ironically that has one of the lowest rates of women political engagement in the region. While in Lebanon there was like few gender reforms, if you want to put it in that frame, but in fact these reforms for gender equality have been implemented in Lebanon, less in Lebanon versus more conservative, if you want, restricted regimes such as Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and Yemen. Now, Tunisia has stepped over, if you want, has made a step forward the new legislation and bringing in women participation in the front of the demands and the regulations and the reforms. Also in Lebanon as well, women do play a significant role in the civil society, advocacy, and social services. And definitely they have an increasingly number in the business field and the private sector. But when it comes to the political reforms, women numbers are still remain extremely low. So this would lead us somehow to understand to what extent sometimes the law reforms are not sufficient if it wasn't maintained and supported by the shifting of behavior and understanding of gender equality. So I think, in my opinion, while working on laws reforms, we should go as well working on the grassroots level to prepare the generation to be more open, more understandable, and more collaborating with the civil society to promote gender equality. So that's why the area of youth and women participation comes together in that sense.
That's excellent. And I wonder if you could tell us maybe link this to your personal experience, because obviously you've worked a lot at the grassroots level and at other levels as well. And I wonder, is this something that prompted your interest in gender equality and women and youth participation in the MENA region, like what you were observing, particularly in Lebanon and also broadly in the region, or why did you come to work in this field?
Yes, definitely. If we look now into the how women plays a significant role in the let's say campaigns and all these actions taking place specifically in Lebanon. Let's talking about Lebanon, specifically in Lebanon, toward gaining more accredited political participation and representation. For instance, now in our governmental cabinet, we have 4 women ministers who have been represented or at least appointed. But this is not enough. Everyone was celebrating and everyone was saying like, yes, here we go. We have women representation. Women is getting more into decision-making positions. That's true, but this is not actually what makes the action being valid, because temporarily and often these women or women who had been elected within a parliamentarian election are a result of personal and or familial connection or supporting with let's say heritage of an ex, let's say husband, ex-father who might be part of the parliament, member of the parliament, or had been previously a minister. So they ended up by being appointed based on these criteria. I'm not undermining their capabilities or their portfolio, because the 4 women, for instance, we have now appointed as ministers are one of the best women who had a great portfolio on that level. But nevertheless, those women wouldn't have access unless the system was allowing them to get access. What we are working on, or what we would wish for, is that the system by itself and the laws framing all this function of the system should be more accessible for any woman, not only women who has connection to the system personnel or whatever. So if we look into looking into this fact and the fact how we understand gender equality in Lebanon, I think these two things had been making me frustrated all the time. That from one hand, like, yes, you have, when you have these discussions with people in the street or in a certain social setup, like people say, why are you doing this to yourself all the time and working so hard to promote gender equality? While when you look into the government, we have women representations, all these arguments, ready to serve arguments. But if you look into the context itself, again, you have the low status that undermine women roles and women and limit women access for many reasons, and we can go through these issues at a later phase, as well as the behavior that you have from the communities, from the people, from the citizens, how they actually see women rights, how they see gender equality, what they do understand about it. This is another struggle. So if I go back to the Lebanese context, gender is often a confusing concept, and specifically in the region. It's mostly used as an interchangeably with woman and women's affair. So if we go into the translation, the Arabic translation of gender in the Arabic context, it leads us to the social type of man and woman. So it's in Arabic, not النوع الاجتماعي, what means, the exact translation is the social type of man and women. So this, in fact, does not precisely reflect the conceptual meaning that we are promoting or we are advocating for. So from this confusion and from the laws needed reforms and from the community and social behavior we are facing, all these together came to add on the top of my frustration, of my own frustration being a woman in my society, in my community, and the daily struggle we face all the time. So from this part, I've been finding myself that I need always to be in the front, let's say, front lines to advocate for gender equality more and more, and put all my capabilities and what I learn within the time and my experience to serve this cause.
And do you think that's one of the reasons that drew you to training for gender equality, perhaps? Like, I wonder if you could tell us why specifically you decided to become, well, not just a trainer, but also a trainer in your work. Do you think that training has a specific or a particular added value in the region or in general when promoting gender equality and trying to change these systems that you're speaking about?
Yes, definitely. I'm going to go back to my first work where I started before being like paid work. I used to do voluntary work with the Lebanese Association for Democratic Elections, where the first time I volunteered to monitor elections. And this is where all the stories start from there, because we used to be youth, we used to be young people who volunteered, and we used to receive training from the supervisors in charge in this organization. And when I used to attend these trainings to gain knowledge on how to monitor election, and so I can be employed in the field to monitor elections, I was really I found myself like there's a lot of information that I don't know about it as a citizen, and I don't have access to it unless it was through such organization. So this is where it all started. And then later on, when I became a member of the team themselves, I've been like in contact again with a new generation of youth who would show up to monitor elections. And this is where we all started giving, we were obliged to also deliver trainings, because you need to prepare the deployment of the monitors. And in order to have a good deployment, you need to train them on a specific skills on how to become monitors. And this is how my first interaction with the training setup started. And by time you would gain more knowledge, you would like make more critical lessons learned on yourself, and you start to find if you are the one who can be really a trainer, or they should be in a different context. So looking into the engagement I was able to maintain with the youth in specific during these training setup, and the impact I left there with some of them, especially when you start hearing like feedbacks from people you meet on the street one day and said, yeah, you trained us on such and such and such. Yeah, we were with you on this training setup, and we liked a lot the ideas. Or someone who would say like, you changed my whole point of view about democracy and elections. Or someone would say, you changed my whole point of view because on women and women rights to access and women participation, etc., etc. So at this point, you start feel like, okay, I'm making a change here. So I'm able to elaborate on this change. Why not taking it as more bringing, or if you want, I start thinking to bring in more expertise in order to develop and learn how to become more expert in that field. And this is where the story actually began. And this led me later on to become more engaged in the training, developing more curriculum, like straightforward for the elections, narrowing the importance of monitoring. And then we moved on to develop more curriculums and trainings on women participation and importance of women participation, until I reached my position at Amnesty International, where I had been, I used to be the Human Rights Education Coordinator for the MENA region. And because of this position, I was guaranteed access to whole the MENA region, and I've been like in contact with the whole, if you want, different society, different communities, different culture in the MENA region, would bring me much more expertise and validated actually the importance of the training and the learning process and the educational process. I think what we miss in the region in general, yes, we do have institutions, we do have universities, we do have schools, and everyone is going through that filter, if you want. But what we don't offer in our universities and our schools and our communities and in any learning official setup is the access to understand the human rights in a different from a different perspective. So if you ask people, or you ask young people, young generation, what do you know about human rights? They can like list you down whole the human rights articles, but do they really understand what does it mean? Do they really practice it in their daily life? And this is where it comes the importance of putting or changing or taking the learning process from the formal settings to informal settings via trainings. So this is, in my opinion, the importance of the shifting, and that's why I chose to like make the change via the training.
And is that one of the reasons why that you've participated, for example, in courses by the UN Women Training Center, leadership courses and other courses, I think, and I wonder if that's one of the reasons that you decided to go for these courses, like to give you more tools and more backing and maybe more of a network when you go into these very important awareness raising and sensitization trainings in the regions.
Yes, definitely. If I go back to the latest training I attended with the UN Women Training Center, it was beside the online trainings, we attended a a training with the KIT University, KIT Institute, Royal Tropical Institute in Netherlands, and it was the professional development of gender trainings program in collaboration with UN Women Training Center. The reason behind choosing this program in specific is that when in your career, you would step up from one level to another. So I arrived to a level in the training where I discovered that, okay, fine, I have the knowledge, I have the basic knowledge that would help me to deliver the training. I have the skills, I have the attitude, I do have the personality that would help me to deliver training in a different setup, in different context. That's fine. But what I miss actually is certain academic learning, ensuring my knowledge, or like validating my knowledge in a very comprehensive framework that would allow me to navigate among the ideas I'm promoting in a more confident way. So that's the reason, mainly the reason behind attending or participating in this specific program. So, but I was very happy that I took this decision, because within the whole 6 months that we had to between the physical attending and the online course and the assignment we were asked to do, I can say that it helped me to shift from one from, let's say, if we want to give certain number for the levels, I like shifted immediately after this course. If I was at 5, I can say that I arrived to 8. You know what I mean? In that sense, because there was a gap in my own knowledge. I understand what is gender equality. I know how to promote gender equality. I know what does it mean, gender equality. But there was a gap to link it to that level of development and how this would affect all our daily life, and how gender inequalities would affect the whole system we are living in. So this chain, actually the course has linked up these two knowledge together and make it stronger. And the most important part is that I became more confident of while delivering information and arguing on some, like, intense ideas, especially when it comes to the resistance you receive from people in the field. So yeah, I can say that's why I chose such courses, and that's why I'm always interacting with UN Women Training Centers online course, because it helps a lot, and it will bring you more closer to the practitioners all over the world. And this is the most important, learning from each other.
I would definitely agree. And you mentioned resistances, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. What kind of resistances have you experienced as a trainer, and how have you navigated these, either specific to the context, or do you think in general, like as you've already mentioned, there's a lack of awareness perhaps about what gender is and what kind of systemic power relations are underpinning it. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about how you've navigated these resistances.
Okay, what I noticed from the beginning of the trainings is that we used to have, at the beginning of the career, you used to have like a specific design training that you need to deliver at the first stand when you used to be a junior, let's say, trainer. In that sense, you will be part of a already designed training. Okay, but with time you would learn that what makes the resistance higher from any audience you are approaching is actually your own ignorance of the cultural barrier that, for example, limits women empowerment, or limits women participation, or limits women engagement in a certain training context. So from that, I can, let's say, entitle the resistance is, what I want to say, in order to decrease the resistance in any context, you have to increase your knowledge to the cultural barrier in a specific context. Once you are aware of these cultural barriers, you can easily them down during a training setup. And you can easily define what kind of activities or what kind of learning process you would approach in a different context. So a lot of resistance examples that I can share, such as like, religions are, for example, if you are working in a certain Islamic context, you would always receive from participants this, slogan that the Islamic religion is always fair with women, so why we should be promoting more women's rights, or such an example. So if you are not aware what are the real barriers behind such slogan and how this is being reframed in a certain social context, you wouldn't be able to respond to such ignorance of, or resistance toward promoting women's rights or promoting gender equalities. So this one of kind of resistance. Other resistance would say like, look at yourself. You are a trainer, you are a woman, and you are moving around freely. So why we should be like more working on such ideas? Why we should be promoting more? So this is the lack of understanding between how we act and how we are able to promote our rights and promote our presence and representation in a certain context, and between the laws that are actually affecting our daily life, there's a big gap. So this is another resistance that we will face from participants who would be not accepting that laws are a major problem or a major issue, because people or a human being has the tendency to judge on what they see and not what is behind the scene. So once you can be able to jump into the behind scene and let them see it clearly how it's happening, then you can solve the issue of why we have inequalities in general in the world, not only related to women. It's an inequalities on many other levels that all are linked in, somehow intersecting in some places. So we need to figure out how to break down these limited or framed parameters provided by the society, provided by the participants, provided by sometimes by the work environment. It's not only those who you address. Sometimes within your own organization, you face a lot of resistance in that sense, because some people wouldn't see what you are working on or the importance of promoting gender equality is important at this stage, while we have other issues that need to be solved in the country, for a sense. So you always have the struggle. You always, I'm sorry. You always battle to mainstream gender in all the issues. In that sense, this is what I want to close up this question with.
That was an excellent answer. Thank you so much, Joulia. And we're coming to the end of the session. I'm very sorry for you and for the other audience members listening right now that we had a bit of a technical glitch at the beginning, so that's why we ran a bit over time.
No worries at all.
Thank you. I wonder if you could just close up with maybe a story, as you say, like, challenging these resistances can be a very powerful experience. And I'm sure you have many experiences that are very inspiring or motivational, either that you've experienced a change in yourself or you've seen participants. You mentioned before, when they come up to you in the street and tell you that you've made them think differently about women's rights or think differently about democracy. So I wonder if you could tell us maybe a short anecdote just to close up about, when you've seen this kind of change, either in yourself or in a participant.
Anecdotes. Okay, so you need a short story. Okay. Let me think about. Oh my God, I faced a lot, but none of them that come up now to my mind like directly. But for example, I was like really happy. Like 1 year ago, I remember I met someone who she used to be one of our trainees in Egypt. And back then, when I met her, she was working on voluntary basis with one of the organization, and that's why she was invited into the training. And I remember that we had a very tough training back then, and she was one of the participants who used to be silent at the beginning, and then suddenly became, at the end of the training, as a very vocal participant. And this shifting that happened between the beginning and the end of the training actually was impressive for me, because it's very emotional when you enter the first day of the training and you don't know anyone, and then suddenly by the end of the training, like even if it's only 2 days training, you would end up by having this social relation with everyone, and you feel like you're responsible of everyone because you built up this such dynamic, beautiful dynamic. Beside that, you brought them some new things to learn, but myself, I learn a lot from the trainees. I learn a lot from the participants. So, and you have these like side discussions that bring you more closer to your participants. So by the end of the training, this happened 1 year ago, actually. And after 1 year, I met her in Beirut. She was attending one of the conference, and I was surprised that she was here. And when I asked her, why did you choose to work with this such organization with whom you are attending the conference? And she said, because of you. I was like, okay, how come because of me? She said, I remember once you told us in one of the sessions when I was upset of the resistance brought in by the male participants in specific. I said, as long as male can do whatever they want to reach their own ambitions and career, women can do it. So I think this small slogan, as much as it's so simple, it triggered something in her head. And she was like insisting and promoting this idea among her own community, and she succeeded. Actually, this is one of the like short story that makes a lot of heartwarming when you see such shiftings taking place, even if it's a normal shifting. But when you know that the learning that you provided or the training you provided made a certain or empowered women in a certain way, or empowered males as well in a certain way, you feel proud of what you're doing, and you feel that what you are doing is the right way to do it. There's a lot of stories that I think are more valuable as well, but for the moment I cannot bring in a lot of things. But
I think that's an
I can say that.
excellent.
Yeah, but I can say that training as well made a lot of change in my own personality and my own understanding of people and my own understanding of gender equality in specific. When you will be subject of a different context, different culture, this actually make you rich in knowledge that would help you defend your gender equality advocacy in a right way.
I think that's a very, very interesting point, and a very strong point to say how enriching training can be, and as you say, how empowering it can be for the trainer and for trainees. And I wonder, just as a final sign off, if you have any advice or any final reflections that you'd like to give to maybe other trainers who are listening, either in the Middle East and North Africa or in other parts of the world, because everything you've said has been incredibly inspiring and incredibly instructive and very powerful, in the sense that, how we can overcome resistances, and how we should look beyond what is visible to look at the structures underneath, and how we as trainers can really grow and learn from the participants, from the training sessions, and from these experiences. So I wonder if you have any final words just to wrap up today.
Well, yes, I will end it up by one advice is whatever your context is as a trainer or your capabilities, always believe in yourself that somewhere you are shifting someone else's life. So be responsible, whatever it's gonna take. The most important part is that use your own power to empower people. So this is my last advice.
That's a wonderful message. Thank you so much, Joulia, for joining us today. It's been such a delight to interview you.
Thank you. Thanks for the hosting, and thank you for the interview.
Thank you. And this recording will be on the UN Women Training Center's YouTube channel, so I hope that everyone gets to listen to this and share it as well. And thank you all so much for being with us today, especially you, Joulia. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you very much for the very empowering message. Thank you.
You too. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.